For your final exam in this course, you will be required to write part of a synthesis paper according to a template and the sources that are provided to you. Let's take a look at what a typical synthesis paper might look like. Keep in mind that this paper is significantly longer than the one that you're going to be writing for this course. However, as you go through your academic program, you may be required to write papers that are this length or longer. First, to begin with, make sure you have a title to your paper. Make sure your title is concise and very clear. It should be a clear representation of what you're going to be writing about. Include subheadings such as introduction in your paper. This helps to keep the paper divided into the sections so that the teacher can look for the key information that's required in each section. To begin your paper, write an interesting hook. So in this paper, in the example, the student's writing about puppy mills. So she starts with the hook. Everyone knows about man's best friend, but do they know where he or she came from? So it sparks the reader's attention. Through the hook, they'll want to read the story to get more information about puppy mills. A hook can be an interesting story, quote, statistic, or question. Okay, as you dive into your introduction, be sure to cite your quotations anytime you quote a source that you use. And if you use quotes, of course, include the page number as well too. For this assignment, I had students write about why the topic was important to them and to the world. Of course, in other synthesis papers, you may not have to write that part. Okay, as you scroll through the paper, you'll see other key components of the paper. A synthesis paper and a research paper should have research questions. So here are the research questions that were approved by me before the student undertook more steps of the research. Generally, the research questions will be made after you've done the reading of the sources so that you know what kinds of topics are addressed in the sources and what kinds of things you can answer. However, sometimes in the research experiment, you come up with the research questions first, and then you try to find the sources. The second subheading is called the summaries of the literature. It could also be called the literature review or a review of the literature. So this is where you look at the sources that you read. For your final exam, you'll be required to read 3, but for this paper, my student was required to find 8 sources. And she found those sources on her own, as you would for a real research paper in your class. But for your final exam, these will be predetermined. So for the review of the literature, you want to summarize each of the sources that you've read. So she provides 1 paragraph about each source, and she summarizes the overall main idea of each source into 1 paragraph. Make sure that you use your own words and avoid all the strategies that we used above when we talked about ways to avoid plagiarism. So after you summarize all of your sources, then that's when you really want to get into details about the findings. So this is the key part of the paper, and it will be for your final exam in this class as well too. Here is where you state your argument and you add information about your sources to support or in fact not support your argument. If you find that sources contradict what your argument is, that's okay. You state that. There's no need to delete the source or discard it simply because it doesn't agree with your main idea. Use quotes, of course, and be sure to cite your quotes with in-text citations. If there's no page number, include a paragraph number. While all of these sources were online, I had students cut and paste them and put them into Word documents so that therefore they would have page numbers. But in fact, many of these, if you click on the links, they don't have page numbers. But because how I required students to turn in the sources, that's where these page numbers came from. So here's where you're going to synthesize your information, and you're going to use your sources to state how they support your main idea. In this section also, you're going to be talking about how they answer your research questions. So you'll need to restate your research questions, and then you'll need to find the answers to your research questions and discuss what those answers are. If you use quotes, be sure that you synthesize the quotes into your own words afterwards. You may want to create tables or cut and paste tables from your sources. So be sure to label your tables and give them a title. So here it's table 1 : and then the title, complaints about dogs from puppy mills. And here the student made the table herself. Okay, and then finally in the recommendation section, students would talk about the gaps in the literature or any research questions that could not be answered from the literature that they had read for this assignment. And as you're doing the recommendation section, you always want to conclude it with a conclusion to your paper, what you learned or how you think this topic could be addressed in the future. And most importantly, for any research paper, including your synthesis paper, you're going to want a reference section. So make sure these start on the next blank page, and you're going to put these in alphabetical order with your links. Okay, most of the links here are okay. They go directly to the website, but for this paper, the student sometimes just used the links that she had saved to her computer, and so these may not be able to be clicked on and linked from the person reading. So make sure instead of using the file names, please make sure you use the HTTPS links so that anyone reading your paper would be able to click on and see your sources as well. And please be sure to read through this paper once again so that you have some ideas about how to complete the final exam. Good luck!